Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. Today's video is another in our series entitled Real Estate Fundamentals You Should Know. And this video deals with the time of possession. On the face of your purchase and sale agreement, you identify the closing date, and separately you identify the possession date. And we're not going to talk about the pros and cons of closing plus 3 or having a possession date different than a closing date. That's a subject of discussion for a different day. We are talking about the time of day that possession occurs on the date of possession. So let's pick any day of the week. Let's say possession is set to occur on Monday. And well, for the purposes of our discussion, let's assume that's the closing date. The question that comes to me is the boilerplate language of the purchase and sale agreement seems to indicate that buyer's time of possession is 9 p.m. on whatever the closing date is. I'm sorry, whatever the possession date is. 9 p.m. Who wants to move in at 9 p.m.? Is that really the meaning of the boilerplate language? And if so, what can we do about it as real estate brokers? Because that doesn't make sense to us. And the answer to the question is yes, that is the time of possession. Every time period under the computation of time provision where an event has to occur by or at a specific time, 9 p.m. is the time. It doesn't change from time to time. It doesn't change from event to event. When a deadline arrives under the statewide forms, the deadline is always 9 p.m. on that date of the deadline. Why is that true with possession? People will ask me, because we actually, if possession is supposed to be tied to closing, then we actually have closing at the moment in time when the deed records conveying title to the buyer and seller's proceeds are available to seller. And that might be at 3:30 in the afternoon. Why doesn't buyer get possession of their own home until 9 o'clock at night? And wouldn't it be better if we said that possession was on closing, meaning really truly on closing, whenever closing happened to occur in the middle of the day? And the answer to the question is no, that would be a horrible way to write this provision, because that would give absolutely no certainty to the seller who's trying to move out of the house, get all of their possessions out, clean the house behind them, and turn over the keys at a time when they know the buyer is expecting to have the keys. Well, what about vacant property? What if the property is vacant? Once we have recording, isn't it okay for the buyer's broker to just go over to the house and take the key out of the key box, give it to the buyer? No. Why? Because you have a contract that says possession will not turn over until 9 p.m. on the date of possession. Contracts are nothing more than the agreements between two parties. So with that, if you're dealing with vacant property, for example, and you can anticipate at the time of mutual acceptance that seller's not going to care whether buyer has possession at 9 p.m. or 3 p.m. on the date of possession, then go ahead and change the time with respect to possession only. Buyer will take possession at 5 p.m. on the date of possession. You could say that in the purchase and sale agreement if that's the agreement of the parties. But if you haven't said that as part of the agreement of the parties, then the time of possession is 9 p.m. Buyer brokers, you have no authority, no right to give the keys to the seller's home to buyer prior to the agreed time of possession, 9 p.m. on the date of possession. If we missed this issue when we were negotiating the original terms of the purchase and sale agreement, but as time has moved on, we're getting closer to the possession date, and it appears very clear that seller won't care that buyer takes possession earlier than 9 p.m., then listing broker, go get permission from seller in writing so that you can prove later that you got that permission. Go get permission from seller to release the keys to buyer at 5 p.m. instead of 9 p.m. on the date of possession. Not earlier than the date of possession, but on the date of possession at a time earlier than 9 p.m. if that's the way that circumstances unfold. Simple answer, the contract controls unless the contract provision is amended either at the time of mutual acceptance or later, or unless seller has given written permission to the listing broker to deliver the keys to buyer's broker earlier than 9 p.m. on the date of possession. If you have any questions on this topic or any other, send an email to me, legalhotline@warealtor.org. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.